Okay, I believe we are live. Hi, everybody. We are going right now on the Oracle In podcast. My name is Eric. I'm joined by Kevin and Laquan. How you guys doing? We've been absent for a couple weeks.
What's up? What's up?
Hi, friends.
So I think just to kind of get back into the groove of things, today's episode we were just gonna catch up on, a little bit more of the fallout of what's been going on with the Trump president-elect, his new cabinet that he's filling out, and what's going to be going on as we move forward. But I thought we would also kind of touch upon some recent events, and we were just touching base prior to going live. So do you guys want to continue with what we were talking about before? We were getting into what's going on in Syria and Aleppo and how, I mean, I've seen the images. They're trying to mass evacuate people out of there, and if you don't get out of that city in time, then they're just straight up bombing, and innocent people are getting killed. Kids are getting killed left and right. I mean, it's bloody over there.
Yeah, I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's a holocaust of the Syrian people out there. It's sad. There's been reports of, people doing live streams out there right before their doors are kicked in. There's images all over the internet of little children, dead bodies, and nothing's happening, and I've said this before too, is the world's going to turn a blind eye to it. That's kind of how it goes. They're just going to let it play out, and nobody's going to step in because we all know what's going on out there, and it's sad, so definitely my prayers and condolences go out to all the people who've lost families out there, and the people who are still fighting, fighting a good fight out there. It's messed up on every level, and something needs to be done about it. But I don't think it will be, because I see what happens in this country and how people turn a blind eye to what happens here. So I'm not even surprised of how people aren't paying attention out there. So I like to keep saying it's fighting a good fight.
Yeah, and I'm just bringing up some images right now. Some of these that really broke my heart were just seeing that, and I admit I don't know the full context of this, but I know that a lot of families out there that don't seem to be politically involved are just basically being told that they need to leave. I mean, when you look at these images, I look at, kids crying because cars are being blown out, bombs are being dropped all around them, gunshots are being heard all over the place. It's just brutal.
Yeah, I was looking, or something came across my feed from Twitter where people were live tweeting the last words from Aleppo. Let's just see if I can pull it up. It's, you're looking at it, and you're seeing people say goodbye. You're seeing kids say goodbye. You're seeing parents say, I hope my kids can make it out. The bombs are dropping outside. It's hard to watch. The problem is, I think that, it's not like we can just, okay, so what do? We can send money to nonprofits. We can, do that sort of thing. But we're Americans, right? Let's, send in the fucking Marines, right? That's what everyone's solution is. You're going to do that? Fine. We're going to go in and get you. But that's World War III if we do that.
Right.
That's the reality is, we've kind of let this go long enough that it is down to a serious international, World War III if we go in there.
If it helps to add some context to that, when for the folks that are watching this, if you're not familiar with it, when Kevin's talking about World War III, we basically have a proxy war going on in Syria where we have major players like the United States, we have Russia, and we have Iran that are all looking at Syria and their intervention in the space as looking at it as we have opposition with one another. The United States is not on the same side of Assad, who's the president who was accused of chemical warfare and unfair, undue punishment to his people. And I'm not exactly sure what the cleansing is, because he's definitely wiping his own people out. And I think it's because they're basically in opposition of his rule. And because of this, there are other players that are getting involved, like ISIS and then some of these other factions. And the proxy war is that if we directly put our military and boots on the ground in that area, it'll give Iran and Russia a direct excuse to do the exact same thing. So that's why we're not sending military over there. But what we are trying to do is outfit with some weapons some of the smaller factions so they can kind of fight the war and handle it on their own. But that's where things get really messy, because then we're basically supplying weapons. And then if the Russians do the same thing, then it's this weird, it's just very weird space where we're involved, but we're trying to send humanitarian efforts, but it's just clearly not panning out.
Yeah. So one of the times we've done this in our history was in Afghanistan in, I think, the 80s, when Russia was in there trying to take over, and we started sending guns in to help out the rebels, who turned out to be, what are they called now? The Taliban. That we ended up, giving them a whole bunch of American weapons, American tech to fight the Russians, and they still have it. So we, what we're doing in Syria is much the same thing. We don't like to learn our lessons here in America. We like to, our favorite history is the one we repeat ad nauseum, because, hey, why learn when you can blow things up, right? But yeah, there's, when I say World War III, Eric, I think you put it out pretty well, where you have, Russia and Iran and ISIS, but there's also a lot of other people that would like to see us get our ass kicked, as well as other people that don't like Russia much. So what you would see is, if we went in there, you might see Iran make a move on Israel, right? You might see a few of these Middle Eastern countries either choose a side or not. They don't all like us, even though they play with us because we buy their oil. So it would be real messy. So it's nice to think back about, World War II and think, we were willing to risk it all to stop the extermination of the Jews. And, the reality is we got hit at Pearl Harbor, and we were sitting it out until then. We might not have gotten in there otherwise. We might have just let it play out like we are now. So the kind of the moral high ground, the big brother of the world going into be the savior. I don't know that we're there anymore. And I don't know that the American people would want to see it as much as they want to see this thing stop. And from all accounts, people are, a lot of people are really affected by this. I think the reality of what it would take to get in there and change things, which would be boots on the ground and all that. Americans, a lot of us are kind of sick of war. You went through Iraq and Afghanistan, and it seems like we're always at war. Which actually, have you ever looked at it? Like, of the 200 and whatever years of this country's existence, we've only not been at war for like 20 years.
Right. I
forget the exact number, but we're usually at war.
Yeah, I think that's actually a fragile time for us too, as well. I mean, with the, with this whole Trump thing, I think it's kind of safe to kind of stand pat right now, because we just really don't know how people are looking at us right now. And again, putting boots on ground out there could definitely backfire on us too. So it's a fragile time.
That's the one thing that concerns me, because Congress has to approve the military being put into action, save for the Marines. That's the one thing that the president can put in. Am I right, Laquan?
Yeah. The president can put the Marines in, because normally when there's a war, the Marines are already there. There's probably a couple of units already in that place, So when you actually hear about it on TV and Congress is voting for it, the Marines are already out there, hooking and jabbing. So, yeah.
Yeah, the president can he can authorize certain things that are not technically war, which without Congress, right? Which we saw in Libya. We were over there doing some work without Congress say anything, because it's like, I don't need a declaration of war because I'm just doing this other thing. So,
and plus you always have like the ships, like the naval ships. They're in different theaters, in the water. So there's always a naval ship, near a different country. So, it's easy to kind of offload. And there's always Marines on it. you know, and then you have the Air Force. They always have bases places. So, you know, there's always enough, you know, manpower to put in a country if they need to, without, as Kevin was saying, without a declaration of war. So, so it's no surprise if you see people in a place, you're like, well, why are they there? They always disguise it as some type of, you know, mission or whatever, but it doesn't have to be a war thing.
So realistically, just kind of staying on this a little bit, but getting a little bit away from Syria, what actual threat do we have of somebody hitting us here at the homeland? Is it only a ballistic missile carrying a nuclear warhead? I mean, is that pretty much the only way that we can be touched? And that's why we're looking at Russia like we really don't want to engage these people because they're the only ones that can actually hit us with something here at home.
So they're not the only ones. North Korea can do it. The one that, so the rocket that they tested when they said they were launching a satellite, it's the same rocket, you know, that they said they were launching a satellite, but everyone's like, yeah, right, you guys are testing ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missile. They're saying that the technology they use could actually hit the West Coast already. So you have Russia for sure. Russia has more nukes than we do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just a numbers game. They already have more. And I think they have the bigger ones too. And definitely the dirtier ones. We like to get all fancy with our nukes, but
yeah. No, Russia's ready to get dirty, and they have, you know, the ammunition to be dirty. So they're the guy you don't want to scrap with. You know, no matter how much you know, you might be trained, but that's the guy that you can't knock out. You got the iron chin, and he's gonna keep coming back, and you know, that's Russia. So yeah, like Evan was saying, they ready to fight, and it's they're not coming to lose either. So
no, so the reality is, as far as the homeland goes, where no one's invading the U.S. If you could get enough troops here, which you couldn't do without going through either Canada or Mexico, but let's say that you did, you're sending them on literally, you know, United Airlines kind of flying in. You know, it's not like nobody has the ability to move 1 million man army into this country unnoticed and unshot down. Like we do have the biggest military by a lot. Assuming that they got here, you know, we got rednecks. So even if the military is like, hey, we're sitting this one out, guys, we're gonna go jack them up in the homeland, and you know, you got Jethro going, hey, we got this, Bubba. Don't you worry nothing.
We got the alt-right, so
yeah. Well, not even the alt-right. We got, I mean, every hunter, every red-blooded American that's ever seen that movie Red Dawn to be out there ready to fight. Wolverines.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you guys something else then. So, and this maybe can transition into Trump. So, Trump, obviously, it's been coming out through the news. People have been going back through the years and playing back everything that he's been saying about Russia. And he clearly has ties with Russia. He clearly is friends with a lot of folks over there in Russia. Is this really an opportunity for Russia to enter into the United States and somehow weaken us to the point that they would make a move? Like, is this really another Cold War that we're ramping up for? Because I'm wondering if Congress is going to look at this and say, like, okay, yeah, Trump was our guy, but this is a whole other level of bringing a threat to our shores.
I don't think so. Trump, to me, honestly, Trump is a pushover. So Trump is one of those guys. He has a lot of money, you know, he has his little business and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily think he has a lot of intestinal fortitude. You know, I think Trump is one of those dudes you can kind of bully around, like somebody like Putin or somebody can bully around. But I don't think, though, that this will be the second coming of a Cold War or anything like that.
I mean, if it's a Cold War, it's going to be a real Cold War. You know, it's you'll see a little bit. You might see some blustering, you might see some saber rattling, that sort of thing. But we see that every day. You know, if you pay attention, even half the time, you know, North Korea is always talking about how our newest sanctions are a declaration of war and they're going to blow us into the oblivion, you know? Mm-hmm. So this is what we do. I mean, Russia, they do this as well. I think the challenge okay, so there's a challenge and also not too big of a challenge because Trump is here for 4 years. And what's the analogy? It's the U.S. government is kind of like, what did Obama say during his interview with Trevor Noah? It's kind of like an aircraft carrier. takes a long time to get it turned. It's not a speedboat. You can't just change direction real quick. You got to start this thing moving. So even if Trump goes in there and, you know, Putin's pulling the strings like a lot of people thinks he might be, they're not going to get enough done in 4 years to really get us to that spot where people need to be freaking out.
It's usually the first year of the presidency you get the most done anyway. So I think, and then the next 3 years, you're kind of like ramping up, you know, for like the reelection or something like that. So and I think it's really your next 4 years, you know, if you get reelected is where you can kind of get stuff done. So Trump has 1 year to fuck up the country, you know, so to do his best to, you know, screw us over the best way he can. But I mean, outside of that, if he can't get it done within the first 365, nothing's going to happen.
Well, he's lining up the cabinet to do it for sure.
Yeah, but there's enough though Democrats in there to kind of filibuster a little bit as well. And I really think though there will be more pushback than I think he's anticipating. I think even with that dream team cabinet that he has, I still think things will not go as well as he's planned. Believe me, there is definitely room for me to be wrong, and more than likely I probably will be, because I'm probably underselling it. But I do think though that he will get some things through, but for the most part, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fight every step of the way. You know what we're going to see, and I think what kind of happened at Standing Rock, I think, is a good indicator. Where nobody was paying attention, and then a few people are paying attention, and then a couple thousand veterans showed up, and you know we're like, hey, no, you know, it became actual news. Like actual real news. It wasn't Facebook shared videos. This was on the news. Veterans are deploying to Standing Rock. Well, they're
heading to Flint, Michigan now too. So
yeah. So what we're gonna see, I think, is every time that Trump tries to come out and do something like this, he might get one or two squeaking through early on, but once you get people kind of pissed off, people are already pissed off. I mean, it's not that long ago that, you know, we see Flint, Michigan, or any of these other protests that have been going on, you know, the Black Lives Matter protests. That's not like years ago, like, oh yeah, back in, no, I mean, that's happening now. They happen currently. You start mixing in, you know, the Native American protests, Black Lives Matter, and now you start getting the veterans involved, and, you know, heaven forbid you piss off some white people, you know, you might actually see some legitimate protest.
You know what's funny? Real quick, you know what's funny about this whole thing though is I don't really know for me if it's Trump that I'm really worried about. I really think it's Mike Pence, and I've kind of said this before, because I think Mike Pence is really the person that's going to be pulling the strings. Like, he's the person you don't want as president. So if people pull Trump away, like, you don't want Mike Pence for what he stands for and stuff like that. Because I really think that he's the ringleader, and that's the person you really have to worry about. I understand he's the vice president and all, but with Trump being as absent-minded as he is, like, Pence is the person filling his head with like, hey, look, you know, we probably need to do this and we probably need to do that, you know. So that's what I'd worried about.
Well, that's clear in the intelligence briefings, because it came out that basically Mike Pence is the one that's getting these briefings. What is it, like every day? And Trump is only like, nah, I'll just deal with it maybe once a week. So it's clear that he's taken this presidency and flipping it on its head, where he's running it like a different corporation where, yeah, the president really isn't the one that's, you know, all into it. He's just the face and the one to take the credit. But yeah,
when he was recruiting VP, what he was saying is essentially, who wants to be the most powerful vice president in history? Because Trump doesn't want to be president. He wants to be chairman of the board. He wants to show up to the meeting and say, do this, and then leave, and not actually work for it. He just wants to say, you know, I think this would be awesome, and then leave. And the day-to-day is going to be handled by his cabinet and his vice president and, you know, the other people, Supreme Court justices. That's the problem is, you know, like you're saying, Trump is probably the smallest problem of the Trump administration. It's everything else.
So let me ask you guys, I'm going to bring up an image here of his cabinet here. So this is who he's putting in place so far. So Just so everybody knows, the Electoral College will finalize their votes next week, and in a minute maybe we can talk about that as well. But this is at least who he's putting in place for to fill out his cabinet. So in the top left there, that's actually one that got my attention. So for those of you that maybe aren't as familiar, the Secretary of State who's being appointed, Rex Tillerson, who is the CEO of ExxonMobil. The Secretary of State is basically the person who sits under the president, and they work on foreign policy. So we've had in recent years Condoleezza Rice, we've had Hillary Clinton, we've had John Kerry. Those are the folks that go into tough situations, talk with other, I forget the name that they call it, but it's like Ministry of, what is it, Foreign Policy? I'm not sure how other countries label it.
Yeah, it depends on the country what they call it, but
yeah,
it's their equivalent, right?
Right. So the first one, like of these cabinet people that are put up here, Rex Tillerson is somebody who, the only thing that concerns me about that is that it's already come out that he has interest in northern Russia, where ExxonMobil wants to open up a few of their refineries in the area, so that way they can transport the oil out of that. So there's kind of a conflict of interest in the sense that if he's going to be the one to be the liaison to go over to Russia, of course they're going to be best friends, because basically now they're going to strengthen ties to go into this, new fossil fuel endeavor. So.
Well, didn't Obama put sanctions on Russia?
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. Wouldn't that be undone under Trump?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So to your point of Rex being appointed Secretary of State, that's why it's funny. And then that's why the ties of, Putin and, rigging the election, everything else kind of really comes into play, because, Obama pissed off Putin with those sanctions, and Rex and Trump are really cool with Putin, because this years back, Trump is, pretty much like, oh, Putin's a great person. He follows my every move and yada, yada, yada. And Rex and Putin are really cool as well. So now you put Trump and Rex, who both like Putin, do you put Rex as Secretary of State? That's just going to take away those sanctions anyway at some point, and then it's business as usual for them, But the American people, it seems like they're not connecting those dots, and even though you're putting it right out there to them, like, this is going to happen.
The Daily Show, Trevor Noah, those guys, they kind of connected the dots. And unfortunately, I think Trevor Noah is starting to find his voice a little bit,
I think so too.
Which is good, because, things kind of dipped off. Jon Stewart, that there was a whole lot of eyeballs on Jon Stewart that were watching and listening and, actually paying attention for a little bit there. So Trevor, I think, is starting to find his voice a bit, which is good, because that's more eyeballs that are starting to pay attention. The hard-hitting coverage is coming from the Daily Show yet again. But, the sanctions that the State Department and, the president put on Russia was because they invaded Ukraine, right? Because they went over there and got another country's business over, Putin's ego in a lot of ways. So this was punishment for them crossing borders with their military to go inflict their will upon another country, which you're looking at this administration going, yeah, it's not a big deal. So not only are they not going to, they'll probably lift the sanctions, let, Rex go make a whole bunch of money in Russia, but they're also not going to jump all over Putin if he goes, you know what? I kind of like the USSR. Maybe we should put that thing back together.
Let me ask you both that, because you're bringing up a really good point, and I wanted to bring this up too. So what then happens if, say, everything goes forward, Trump's cabinet gets put into place, and now Russia isn't an enemy anymore, they're more of our friend? Is this where we're just going to see climate change, just anything that's come out to make us more aware that, hey, we have these greenhouse gases now that we're and I've talked to some of the deniers, and I've looked at their claims, and I can see where they get some of them, but it's a little incomplete. A lot of climate change deniers, when they look at the science that's been done, a lot of them look at if you look at the towers that are on land, a lot of them can't piece together and don't coordinate well to show that climate change is actually happening. So they kind of use that as a thing of their argument. But what they never bring into the conversation is, well, did you look at the NASA satellites? Because the satellites can do an aggregate collection of temperature ranges across the U.S., and we can look at those fluctuations and put the pieces together. So that's where I look at, with this administration coming in and fossil fuels looking like they're basically going to have a complete rerun of their power. Coal is going to come back. We're going to start drilling for oil just about any place we can get to it. Is this where climate change is just going to basically exasperate, and we're really going to see some shit hit the fan in our lifetime, like some serious shit?
It's gone with Trump and the people he's appointed. Like
he's got Rick Perry as the Secretary of Energy.
You can forget about that. A meaningful conversation on climate change, only time you're going to have that is like right now. But on a national stage where it actually means something, you can forget about that.
No, they're about to slam their foot on the gas. Well, I actually had this conversation with a friend where I was like, it's only 4 years, really. Because even if it takes them a year to get everything kind of up and running, and then we have a new administration come in, then they'll hopefully, crystal ball says that people are not that stupid that they're going to go, you know what, that Donald Trump's doing a hell of a job. I like that guy. That we get in 4 years and a new administration coming in that says, okay, whoa, guys, hit the brakes. This isn't happening. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be bad, but it's not like the sea levels are going to pop up 12 feet in the next 2 years. We're in our uncharted territory, whether we hit the gas or hit the brakes right now.
Do you think the Democrats can they get their shit together to, in 2 years, take back the House and the Senate?
No.
This kind of reminds me of when Obama got elected. Remember when the Republican Party was in disarray? Oh, he's like, all right, cool. So the next 4 years, we need to get somebody together. And then the collection of people they had when Obama got reelected, and you're like, what the hell happened to the Republican Party? And now here we are 4 years after that, we got Trump. And who's the front runner? Is Bernie going to run again? I mean, who's going to run?
He's going to be 150 years old by then.
Exactly. So like we just flip-flop places. So where the Republican Party was during the Obama administration is where the Democratic Party is now during the Trump administration. So don't be surprised if Trump gets reelected, because I don't see who out there is going to compete against him from a strong standpoint from the Democratic Party. Like I don't want to sound pessimistic about it, but can you name somebody?
I think Bernie Sanders. I think
outside of Bernie. So I hope Bernie gets it, but
they've been floating Biden's name as running in 4 years as president.
Right. He joked about it.
Isn't he just as old as Bernie?
No, I think he's a little younger. But
yeah, he's up there. But yeah,
here's the problem. The problem is the Senate seat is a 6-year term, right? And we just had a whole bunch of senators get reelected or elected. So part of the Senate is locked in, right? We got a midterm election. I think it's they space it out, so it's like a third, something like that. Where we'll get a few of the senators up for reelection. The House is where we have the biggest opportunity, but the House is not even close. You want to talk about can we flip Congress? You're talking about taking the trajectory that we're headed on right now, which is very, very, very conservative, Tea Party, super crazy, special people. And you're saying, oh, we're going to do 180 degrees on that in 2 years? The Dems don't have their stuff together at all. They don't have anyone that can pull anyone together. You're talking about the biggest organizing effort in history to try to make an attempt. And I really, after the ass kicking that they just got, because it wasn't just Trump. I mean, it wasn't as bad as 2010, where it was the Tea Party sweep or whatever they called it, but it was bad. I mean, there was a lot of losses. Do
you think if the Bernie thing didn't happen, as in like the information came out where they sabotaged Bernie, do you think if that information did not come out, that the Democratic Party would have a legitimate chance come the re-election or the next 4 years? Because I think that right there fractured the party, and I think that hurt more than anything else. It wasn't really Trump winning. It's that and the loss of faith everybody had in the Democratic Party when that information came out. Because it was like, yo, are you kidding me right now? It's like,
yeah.
If you beat Bernie straight up, okay, his supporters probably would have went over to Hillary willingly. Okay, fine, you beat him fair and square. I get it. But the fact that you came out and you cheated,
yeah,
the way you did, I think everybody's like, nah, man, I can't touch that. So it's just like, do you think? So my question is, do you think if that did not happen, that the Democrats would stand a better chance?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
it would absolutely be a better chance. The reality is, I had this conversation the other day, and it was, we will not know whether or not Hillary beat Bernie fair and square, because there was giant question marks on things like the Nevada primaries, you know, as a glaring example. Go watch the footage and tell me that looks fair. That looks like it's done correctly. And you know, the DNC emails, there's nothing really, there wasn't anything in there that was crazy, you know. It was
oh, come on.
Oh no, of course.
Oh, dude, they definitely. I mean, when you have,
of course they took a side.
Yeah,
of course they took a side.
All right,
but there was nothing in there that was that crazy. Of course they took a side.
Well, but that's what I think is crazy, is that the fact that they did take a side, because that leadership is supposed to be.
It was her campaign chair. Well, like what? Yeah, you're gonna expect, you know, neutrality? Of course not. Her running mate is the guy that stepped down to let Debbie Wasserman Schultz take over.
Was it true though that she got questions to one of the debate beforehand?
Yeah, Donna Brazile sent her at least one of the questions. That, I mean, she set this up in 2008. She lost to Barack and said, you know what, I am going to be president when he's done. And she has enough influence, you know, through her husband, through her own, you know, she's a legitimate politician in her own right. So she put things in motion over the last 8 years that said, I will be president. And anyone, you know, the fact that Bernie came in and had the audacity to go up against her meant that he had to go down. And, you know, I think for a lot of people, they look at the Democrats like they should be above this. Okay, the Republicans, fine. They lie, cheat, and steal to every chance they get. But the Democrats are supposed to be the ones that are trying to fix that. And
take
I
the
think
moral high ground. Yeah,
it was that loss of faith in the integrity of the party. And I can tell you right now, they are not doing a damn thing to try to rectify that. They haven't learned a lesson.
Well, they took it for granted. Even after the information came out about how they, you know, sabotaged Bernie, everything else like that, I think Hillary still took the votes for granted. You know, I still thought she was, in her mind, she was like, you know what? I know this happened, but don't worry, they're still going to vote for me no matter what. You know, she pandered to whatever crowd she could pander to, whatever. And she thought she had it in the bag. She downplayed Trump, and she really thought she had it bag. You could tell in her air of arrogance, just kind of how she exuded. You know, she's like, oh, I got this. She really felt like she had this in the bag. But she let up, and Trump came through. You know, Trump never stopped running, you know, no matter what. He never gave up. And I even hate to say that about him, but just in this context, you know, he didn't, and he won, you know, because Hillary thought she had it in the bag, you know, and she thought she could do what she wanted. And it didn't matter because she thought she had it in the bag. If you break down the percentage of the people by race, there was still a good amount of, you know, African Americans who still voted for Trump. You know, so what does that say? Because historically, blacks vote for Democrats. You know, and I mean, you do have some sway. You know what I'm saying? But for the most part, to have that majority go towards Trump, you know, you're like, ah, damn. And even you had some Mexicans, you know, out there voting for Trump. You know, so that just kind of shows you, you know, where people were. They were that fed up, you know, with Hillary.
People don't like Hillary, whether it's deserved or not deserved. I'm not passing judgment myself, but what I'm saying is, if you look at the primaries, right, and they did the heads up, you know, let's put, you know, Bernie versus Trump versus, you know, all the different candidates, and then Hillary versus all the candidates. The worst performing candidate against all the Republican slate was Hillary. She was the worst. Go look it up. She lost to Trump. I mean, I wasn't alone when I was sitting back, and when it, you know, it was looking like she was going to get it, and went, we're going to lose. we might actually lose this thing.
I think she expired, you know, at the end of the day. And so what I mean by that is that I think people, they're tired of looking at her, you know, because you had to deal with her through the Clinton administration, you know, when Bill was in office. You know, it's like she's just been around for so long. You know, when you see somebody on TV for so long, after a while, you're like, man, I'm tired of seeing it. I know you're talented, whatever, but you got to go. You know, like you run your course. And so it's kind of like, we got to get her out the way, you know. And she was kind of banking on the fact that she's a career politician, you know, with Bill and stuff and her stance. But she's been lying a long time, and she's been called down on it. And Trump lied too. But Hillary just been lying longer than Trump. So it's easier to believe Trump's lies because he's only been doing it in this political arena for, you know, for I don't know, what, a year or something like that, versus Hillary, who's been doing it since what, the 90s.
Well, the Republicans are supposed to lie to you, right?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys something. When you were talking earlier about the moral high ground, there's kind of two parts to this. One is it's challenging to take the moral high ground. I mean, I was telling you guys prior to us going live, I got into it with somebody where very rarely will I drop myself to just launch into somebody and start like attacking with names and stuff. But I broke, man. There's one thing that strikes a nerve with me is when I see people bullying. That's where I tend to draw the line, and it's like, all right, I intervene in that, and I don't care what it takes. But most of the time, I try to take that high ground where, you know, don't get caught up in that, because usually it's not going to work out well no matter what happens. So if we're trying, if like on my level, if that's a big enough challenge, how do you do that at a level where you're running for president? Because the thing that really turned me off about Hillary, like speculation about all this stuff was always kind of like, I try to keep it to the side as best I could, unless it was like right in front of me. But it was when she started to do the whole like calling out deplorables, and then there was actual video footage where somebody interrupted her during a speech, and rather than her like Bernie Sanders, who handled any interruptions like, yeah, I get it, you guys are pissed, I'm here to communicate, she got egoic and like shut that person down. So that's what turned me off to her. But like, how do you take that high road? Because even Elizabeth Warren slipped up on that.
But so, why are you surprised though? This is real good. Like, but she's always been doing just footage and stuff of her doing this even prior to like, you know, her being in the election right now. Like this, she's always been like this. I think she just got exposed on a more public, you know, in a more public way, you know, this time. So I wasn't surprised when I saw the thing, because she's always been this, you know. Now all the cameras are really on her and document her every move. Now she couldn't keep it together. You can only fake for so long, you know. Right. You know, that's why they always say, like, you know, do the right thing even in the dark, because when the light comes, you don't have to do it. You know what I'm saying? It comes natural. You don't have to act like you're doing the right thing. For her, she couldn't do it because the light was on her for so long. She reverted back to who she normally is. So a lot of people were just like,
she's been under the microscope for so long that, you know, yeah, it's a fairly recent thing that everything's on social media. It's fairly recent. But she wasn't on social media. She wasn't out at a party or a club where someone had I mean, she was on press conferences and interviews. And I mean, there's footage of her forever. So when she started trying to play the political game, there's evidence saying, no, you know, 2013, she was still against gay marriage. Right. And she, you know, 3 years later, it's like, no, I've always been for. You have, I mean, Trump isn't any better. In a lot of ways, he's worse, but he hasn't been under the microscope as long. So there's less evidence. I mean, he will lie and tell you he didn't say something that he literally just said. Like, that's a special kind of, I mean, that's almost Bill Clinton good. Right?
So let me ask you guys on that though. Why do you think his supporters give him such a big pass on that? Like, I can understand wanting to shake up Washington, but this is like on a whole other level of we don't want this in society. Do we, or do people just like do it for fun?
Well, if you give me a quick second, we kind of brought this up prior to going on air, and I said that Trump is a master salesman, you know. And the great thing about him being a master salesman is a great salesman can get you to buy something that you didn't want to begin with. You know, he's going to tell you what you want. You know, he's going to sell it to you. You know, and so to me, in my opinion, the traditionalists, that Rust Belt, that Bible Belt, were impulse buyers. They were just looking. They was looking for something. They didn't know what it was, but they know they came in the store, which is AKA politics. They was looking to. They wasn't leaving the store until they bought something. That money was burning, AKA their vote was burning their pocket. Trump came in, he sold them a bill of goods, you know, and it was like, you got me, you know, simple as that. Now that, you know, you went home, you know, and you realize that what you went home with is not as good as it sounded, you know, now it's too late. There's a no return policy. He's there. You've already done the damage, you know, now you're stuck with this and you don't know what to do with it. You know, it has no functionality to it. It doesn't enhance your life in any way. If anything, you know, that honeymoon period of you having it is done. You know, now you got to deal with it. So,
well, I mean, there's a lot of people right now. I forget the hashtag, like Trump regrets or something. Trump regrets. It was something like that, where it was all of his supporters that were like, you know, because the day that he won, he started backpedaling on every controversial thing that he said. Right. Well, you know, wall, you know, maybe not. You know, the Muslims may. And all of a sudden, all of these people were like, but you said you were going to get rid of the Muslims. And their instant regret, from, you know, the racist douchebags to the people that were like, you said you were going to drain the swamp. I voted for you because you were not going to put a bunch of Wall Street billionaires into your cabinet to fuck me over even more. And what has he done? And they're going, I made a mistake.
They got caught up. It's that simple. You know, he was a brand. He kept, you know, they bought into the Trump brand. They didn't buy into him. They bought into his brand. Again, it goes back to him being a master salesman. Like, Trump kept his name in everybody's mouth, you know, by saying controversial stuff, you know, as in, you know, banning Muslims, you know, I'm going to lock Hillary up, you know, catchphrases, you know, just things that people can latch to. Oh, he's going to lock up Hillary. You know, oh, he's going to ban Muslims. But there's no substance behind that. It's just a phrase. It's just a little phrase you can say. Build that wall. Build that wall. How are you going to build the wall? Who's going to pay for the wall? You know, I'm going to get Mexico to pay for it. If you had any kind of common sense, you know damn well you can't make Mexico pay for anything. You see what I'm saying? So it's just like he had people latching to different phrases, and different phrases appeal to certain segments of society. So to your Trump grits, you know, like, yeah, everybody else is like, really? Like, y'all really buying into this? Y'all really think he's going to be able to do this? You really think he's going to lock up Hillary? You really think he's going to be able to ban Muslims? Like, how? Because he never even said how he was going to do it. He didn't need to, because he already had people, you know. So now when he backpedals, it doesn't matter. So what? He's in.
Yeah,
they're screwed, you know. So whatever.
Yeah, the one. So Michael Moore, of all people, right? The hefty gentleman from Fahrenheit 450, or no,
Fahrenheit 9/11.
Yeah, and then Bowling for Columbine, all those kind of things. He's the angry liberal. You know, he made some prediction. He was actually out there predicting that Trump was going to win weeks before. You know, he was like, people don't want to hear this, but this is what's going to happen. He also, I think, has said what he said. There is a chance he may not even actually take the presidency. He may bow out since he's won, which is starting to look like that's not the case. At least officially. Unofficially, he may just take a seat and let Pence do all the work, and, you know, just get to be president, fly around on Air Force One. But, you know, you hear some of these predictions, and one of the ones that I think was, to me, it's very telling, but it's also possible, which is that he's going to be impeached before he gets through his first term. And in order for that to happen, you have to have the Republicans do it, because, you know, it has to come from Congress. You can't, you know, it's not the people that can do it. So he's going to have to piss off enough of the, you know, Tea Party Republicans as well as the Democrats to actually have them, you know, do what they did to Clinton, which is take and put him on trial for a crime of some kind.
You know what's funny to me, and I want both your opinions of this, and this is just kind of how I see things. Like, I've never in my life seen so many white people scared, you know, and up in arms, you know, because now that Trump is president-elect, you know, there's a lot. If you even look at on the news stations and stuff like that, you know, there's a lot of news anchors, white news anchors, that are just trashing him. And you don't see white people trash other white people like that publicly. You just don't. You'll see them do it to other minorities, stuff like that. But for the most part, the fact that Trump, you know, is there, and he's scaring a lot of them. But it's like nobody's going to do anything. You know what I'm saying? Even people within like the party like don't want him there, but nobody's really going to come out and say something. It's really like it's rank and file, right? So imagine if Obama, right, did this, you know, and he had his daughters, if they were older, at these meetings and stuff like that. I mean, there would have been a mob at the White House, pitchforks, torches, ready to burn that bad boy down. If Malia and Sasha was in there with, you know, the tycoons, you know.
Yeah,
talking.
President of Japan.
Yeah. So, and that's what I'm saying. And there's so many, and, you know, and I'm just, I know I don't like making a lot of things white and black all the time, but like for this one, like, but they see it and they're talking about it, but they're not going to do nothing. It's almost like they're wired not to like really speak out too much, you know? So like, what are y'all thoughts on that?
Well, to me, so this is different. Right. And that's something you're going to hear from a lot of people. This is different. A lot of people, you know, so you look back at the last terrible Republican president, which was George Bush, W. Right.
Dub.
Dub. It was different, right? Because you knew Cheney was an evil dickbag, right? You could look at his face and know that he was Emperor Palpatine. Like, you knew this dude was evil. Like, you know, he just was like, oh, you know, give me some fresh baby, you know. But it was different. It wasn't. W was stupid, right? He wasn't a smart man, but you could tell that he really did kind of want to make America a better place. He just didn't know how to do it, right? He was kind of, you know, he was the aw shucks guy, you know. This is different. So you didn't see, I mean, you saw definitely some opposition to Bush. There was a lot of people that, you know, the Occupy Wall Street movement, that sort of thing popped up. It wasn't super focused at him, but it pretty much was. You know, it was his policies. A lot of the what's the word I'm looking for? Deregulation. It was a lot of that deregulation stuff that they were kind of up in arms about. So when you're saying that, you know, you don't see white people scared and like this is different. People understand that legitimately this could end with a bunch of us getting killed because he pops off at the mouth and picks a fight because his ego, you know. And the problem is we've had Obama, who is the most measured president that I've ever seen. I mean, if you want to see what it takes to do this job, watch the interview that Trevor Noah from the Daily Show did with Obama, where he's asking him these point blank questions, and Obama's, let me tell you, choosing every word.
Calculated, but diplomatic. It wasn't calculated like, let me burn this guy to the ground. It was, how do I not burn him to the ground, but also make my point heard? That's the one thing I love about Obama more than anything, is that his diplomacy is that I'm going to tell the truth, but I'm going to figure out a way to say that, because rather than, like you just said, rather than ripping somebody down, and this is where it kind of comes back to his original campaign of Yes, We Can, a very optimistic, uplifting sort of piece of speech. It was just, he does that all the time, and I love that about him. But Trump is the exact opposite. He doesn't care if he rips into you. And what was it like last week, dude, on Twitter? He goes after a 19-year-old. The president-elect of the United States actually had time to comment to a 19-year-old.
Well, he's not going to security briefing, so what do you expect? I've never seen. I see senators and I do see some Congress people, you know, congressmen and women, you know, on Twitter and stuff like that. But I've never seen like a president, you know, and I know that wasn't out back then though, but like I would have never imagined that a president would tweet, and the contents of his tweet too. You know, it's not generic tweets. These are like, I thought about this type tweets because there's spelling errors and stuff in those tweets, you know? So it's just like, nobody's running his Twitter. Like, he is walking around with his BlackBerry, whatever he has in his hand. And he's like, you know what? Fuck Hamilton. You know? And he's like, I'm going to put that out right now. And even Pitts probably don't do that. He's like, man, shut up. I got this. Bam. And he puts it out there. You know? So it's like, what are you doing right now? You know, why are you on Twitter, you know, as frequently as you are? That makes no sense. And another point too, why is his kids though, you know, especially Ivanka, you know, why is she at these meetings? You know, I don't get it. You know, if that's who he wants to install into the White House and get them involved, it's kind of like, to me, like what Michelle Obama was. She has, you know, she has her own say in the White House, and she carries a weight with her. And I don't think Melania is going to really do that much. So I think Ivanka is kind of that person. That's what I'm saying. Like, the first lady, I think, is not going to really do much. I mean, nothing. The first daughter's still in that role. Exactly. Yeah. But, you know, so that's weird and that's new. It's new. Yeah, for sure. So Michelle Obama came out and was what was the quote? It was, you know, this is what it feels like when there is no hope. Yeah. Well, I'm paraphrasing. You know, I mean, I think that gets to a lot of that kind of, you know, the scared white people kind of thing. Is you're looking forward and you're going, oh shit, man, this is actually bad. This isn't like my stocks might take a hit. This is like he might live tweet tirade on Kim Jong-un and get us fucking bombed. Yeah.
Or even worse, like what happens if he goes after somebody here at home? Like, remember early on when he was talking about Hillary Clinton and saying like, yeah, she wants to take away your guns' rights, and you know what? You guys have that Second Amendment for a reason. And it's just like, dude, he could seriously get somebody killed. He can get, and like, I don't think what a lot of his supporters really understand is it's going to be fun and games until something comes to your doorstep. And I've talked about this before. I was in Los Angeles when the LA riots came, and that stuff was happening in my neighborhood and right down the street. And I got to tell you something, when it's happening at your home and things are getting real, you have a very different perspective, and people aren't going to be so, whatever, it's not going to affect me. So yeah, I'll just, let it run. No, you're going to really be thinking twice about like, what the hell did I just do? How am I connected to this?
Yeah.
And oh man,
what we're seeing too is, so there's been at least as reported, at some gun stores, a 4-fold increase in minority and black people buying firearms. A lot of these people are going to be first-time buyers, right? If you look at the percentage of population that's gun ownership, it's 90% white dudes, 10% everyone else. So we're seeing an increase for sure. I was standing outside of a election watch party that was a bunch of liberals, right? And what I heard made me laugh and then shake my head, which was, I think I need to go buy a gun. I'm afraid of what's going to happen. These are people that, go out there and campaign against guns, and they're going, I think I need a gun, because the people that supported him, those real crazy guys, they all have guns. So I think I need to protect myself now, given that he is in charge.
You know what? I was telling you guys this earlier, and I'm one of those guys. I've never owned a firearm in my life, and I'm really considering it. Not because, I necessarily think martial law is going to take effect, but, and I was telling you guys this earlier, growing up in the streets of Los Angeles, and I'm not, talking like some safe suburb. I'm talking like, you kind of learn by the hard knocks. That's just how it is. That environment taught me a lot about, banding with the tribe. You better have a group of people that you click with, because otherwise, if you're on your own, you're going to be a target. If you come off weak in any way, shape, or form, you're going to come on somebody's radar. That's how like that tribal mindset works. And the thing that's always held me back from getting a gun is that I've always thought that, if I want to live in this philosophy that we as human beings are capable of more, that we are capable of compassion and empathy and communication and all these things, it really goes against that if I'm over here showing that I have a fear, that I feel the need to protect myself from whatever threats that I perceive. But this is getting to the point where it's really making me consider, if martial law were to take effect, if I'm the one guy without a gun, that's not going to stop. I won't be able to reason with somebody. There's not going to be a way to connect with somebody who's looking at me, and for whatever reason, if they see me as a threat, I'm going to be in their crosshairs. And do I want to be that guy without a gun? Do I want to be that person that doesn't at least have a chance to protect myself? And that's where I'm on the fence with this, because I don't want to wait till it's too late, but at the same time, I don't want to rush into fear,
The funny thing is, you just made a perfect point for every gun owner's argument, which is, I don't want to need it and not have it. Right. That's what you hear all the time.
Yeah.
It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And what we're seeing is, I grew up with guns. I like shooting things. It's kind of fun. I haven't done it much recently, but, take a watermelon out in a shotgun, and that's a hootin' good time. But what you're seeing is just the people that traditionally were like, oh, that's stupid, like I can't understand why you would, are starting to go, oh, okay. Whether or not it's any more logical than the other person's, fear. I don't want to say paranoia, because it's a lot of times it's a legitimate fear. If you live in an area that has really high crime, home invasions, that sort of thing, you have a legitimate fear of having someone come in and try to kill you, take your stuff, whatever. So what we're seeing is, to Q's point, seeing a bunch of white people actually getting afraid of the other white people, which, is kind of new. We haven't done this.
It is. I mean, that's why I brought it up, because for me, from my standpoint, when I look at it, I was like, Well, goddamn. I was like, I ain't never seen this many white people scared like this before of another white person. So when white people are scared of another white person who's in power, that's when you know shit's gotten real, you know, seriously. And so it was actually a legit question because these things I think about, I was like, I've never, because when you see the anchors on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, these are prominent people who would be for, you know, a Republican president. But when those dudes are and women are out there being like, oh, hell no, like, what is he doing? And what's this and what's that? I'm like, okay, like, you know, I see, you know. And to Eric's point about the guns, like, you know, Trump laid this foundation, you know. I mean, he did say during his campaign, I can go out right now and go shoot somebody and I won't lose any votes.
And he was right. And he was 100% correct.
Yeah. And how many times did he say during his campaign that, you know what, get his ass out of here. You know, if somebody beats him up, I'll pay for your lawyer fees. He laid this foundation, you know, for this violence. You know, he didn't have to say it, but he implied it. You know, he never directly said go out there and do something, but he implied it. You know, so now what happens? You know, he wins the election. You know, now there's a spike, you know, in violence. You know, white males going out there snatching off, you know, hijabs, beating up minority adolescent youth, stuff like that. So yeah, of course, you know, the gun sales are going to go up because it's like, you know what, I don't want to be caught slipping, you know, and it's that simple. But on the flip side too, to Kevin's point, a lot of these people are new gun owners. That's scary too as well, because when you buy guns out of fear and you don't know how to use it, if you're not going to the range, if you're not taught safety, you know, anything like that, what happens when you're scared? You react.
You're going to kill the neighbor's kid trying to shoot the guy that's in your house.
Right. So look, you have your finger in the trigger and, you know, you pull it instead of having it on the side, you know, so now if you're jarred at any point, now you pull the trigger back and you done killed somebody, you know, and maybe you didn't need to, you know, maybe you didn't know the gun was off safe, you know, or maybe you're trying to pull the trigger and you don't know the gun's on safe. So you could have protected yourself, but now you died because you didn't know to take the gun off safe.
Didn't know it was loaded.
Yeah. So there's so many different things. And I'm all about people, you know, if you want to get a gun to protect yourself, do what you got to do, but you got to be safe about it. You know, I was in the military for 8 years. I understand how this stuff works. You know, you got to be responsible because it's a quick second life and death with a gun, you know? And so I just feel like with all these new gun owners, there's going to be a whole bunch of accidental shootings. It's going to be a whole bunch of just things, you know, triggered because people are scared and they don't know any better. They just know they don't want to die, you know. So, and I'd rather see you die than me die.
You know, go for it.
Here's the challenge. You get all these new gun owners that are, you know, they want to go learn how to use their gun, right? Who are the only people out there teaching the classes that are out there doing the gun ownership? It's the NRA and all of their members. So you're not gonna walk in there and say, I'm afraid of Trump and I bought myself a Glock. They're gonna just avoid it, which it's not gonna work out well.
You know, I got into a debate on Facebook about this where you know, a lot of gun owners here in Flagstaff were coming after me because somebody had put out this meme where they were comparing, you know, the silliness of people blaming guns to, you know, cars can be used as a lethal weapon, pencils can be used as a lethal weapon. So it's not the gun, it's the person behind the gun. And I was making the argument that, yeah, but those things are not, the purpose of a car is not to hurt somebody or harm somebody, it's to transport somebody. The purpose of a pencil is to write, not stab somebody. The purpose of a gun is to eject a lethal projectile. So the purpose of it is to harm what's ever on the other end, no matter what the intent is. And I made that distinction that there's the purpose of the gun, which is you don't want to butter bread with a gun. The purpose is to fire something, but the intent can always range. And that intent is where I do think the gun owners are legitimized in the sense that there's a reason why we do have a Second Amendment, and there's the reason why that it's still here. And that's because if all else breaks down, you need to be able to at least protect yourself against tyranny, protect yourself against, you know, social uprisings, whatever it is that could possibly come to your door and threaten you, you need to be able to defend yourself. And that's where, you know, as far as purchasing a gun for me, and I know this might sound silly bringing this in, but I'm seeing it more and more being realized. If we think about it, like in terms of Star Wars, the dark side and the light side, the light side always wants to take the high moral ground, but Jedis always carried lightsabers. They're not going to be unarmed. They understand that at some point you can have, you know, a virtue of altruistic intentions all you want, but force is going to have to meet up against force. I mean, a Buddhist monk can sit and meditate for peace in the world, but that's not going to stop a Nazi tank from running them over. So at what point do a lot of people on the left and Democrats need to realize we need to start using force to push back? Now, I'm not saying like go out and use a gun and use that kind of force, but I am saying that I think a lot of us that understand that inclusiveness, a lot of us that really do try to extend that community type of mentality, we need to get together and understand what force we do have and what force we want to use. Because right now, it seems like a lot of people are just falling to the dark side. And I don't want fear and hatred to take over.
Fear is a hell of a motivator, man.
It is.
It's the best way to motivate people in the world. And, first, let me just say, I will teach you how to shoot a gun so you don't kill the neighbor's kid. All right. We will get.
Thank you.
I'll make sure you don't shoot yourself or anyone else that isn't trying to, come at you. So, the problem is right now we have let's oversimplify it, right? You have the left that has been anti-gun. You have the right that has been pro-gun. And what you're seeing is the left starting to understand the right a little bit in the motivations behind it.
I agree.
But they've kind of demonized that subculture or that piece of the country so hard that they don't know what to do. Like there's a missing element that, if you want to get a gun, get a gun. I went to the NRA classes where they teach you how to shoot as a little kid. They're like, all right, don't touch the trigger, point it down range, all that, I was drilled into my head before I ever touched one without an adult, if I had to go right now and pick one up and try to defend myself, I'm a smart guy, but I wouldn't have grown up with it. I wouldn't have had the background. I wouldn't have the training. So if you're going to go out and get one, call me. I'll teach you how to use it.
And just educate yourself. You need to know what type of gun to get, like based off the type of person you are, like what gun do you need? You don't go just get the biggest gun you can find, because you don't need the biggest gun. That's how you snap your wrist off, because of the kickback.
Like what was it? Bill Burr said, one of the funniest things I ever said. He said, where a lot of people mess up when they get a gun is that they always want to keep something like a 9 or like a 45 or like some big gun. He's like, if you're in your house, do you know how loud that thing is going to be when it pops off? Like you're going to go deaf, and so is the person that you're trying to aim for. So what you want to do, you want to get something like a 22, something that just is enough to kind of harm the person and put them down, but it's not going to blow your ear off. So yeah, I think a lot of people that are not familiar with guns, like they're little mini explosions. You got to know what's involved with that.
You have to be comfortable with it too. You have to go out there and you have to shoot it. You have to practice with it, because a lot of these weapons, they do have that kickback, and that kickback scares people because that kicks back and you drop the weapon because the kickback just scared you. And guess what happens when you drop the weapon? It hits the ground and it goes off again. Now you probably done kill somebody in your house and your own family, but you've been trying to kill the perpetrator in your house. But because you're scared of the kickback and it caught you off guard, it drops out your hand.
Yeah.
And some of these guns aren't light. Some of these guns they have some weight to them.
Plus so the ammunition has weight too.
So when it kicks back, that bad boy can really hurt your wrist.
Yeah.
So and when no matter how strong you are, it comes up when it kicks back. And you can hit yourself in the head. There's a lot. You can knock yourself out.
Pop on YouTube and just type in gun fails.
Yeah, I watched that.
So I mean, the reality of the situation is it's a very, whether you can say legitimate or illegitimate. I'm not going to judge that right now on the fear of why people are rushing out to do this. I can understand why some people want to. I think other people might be rushing a little quick, but the reality is the same thing that we've been saying for a long time is you got to take it seriously. If you're going to have a weapon in your hand, I don't care if it's a samurai sword. You got to know how to use it. You got to know what you're doing so that you don't accidentally hurt someone. I mean, how many gun deaths, the kids that find their parents' gun and shoot their little brother, that's the same thing we're talking about right here. If you feel like you're threatened because of what's going on and you want to protect yourself, you damn well better learn how to use the thing. And then you got to teach the kids, you got to do the stuff that you've been preaching for decades.
You gotta learn how to aim too. Like I know that people like this point and shoot, but sometimes it doesn't work like that. Have you ever gone to a gun range and point at the black part of the silhouette and don't hit it at all? Like trigger control, you have to learn how to breathe, you know, when you're shooting. So there's this, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that, but I'm just saying, like, there's a lot to it. You know, it's not just, oh, let me point it. No, because you can miss 3 or 4 times pointing at that person, you know. So again, you know, you just got to be careful, you know, when you get these weapons.
You know what, though? The one thing that I'm hoping that we can try to come back to, and this is where, again, I think we're going to have to do a lot of community organizing and folks just putting their heads together. We don't want it to come to that. Nobody wants it to come to that, because even as much as the people on the right may think that, you know, I've had my guns and I've been practicing and I know how to protect myself, dude, all it takes is either one mistake or like somebody to have a lucky shot. You know what I mean? It's like we don't want that to happen, because at the end of the day, there's no point into any of us losing our lives or the lives of people that we love over an ideology that is not fully proven, and it could be on either side. You know, and Kevin, to your point, I think that's where you're right. I think a lot of people on the left that are kind of panicking a little bit and feeling the need to protect themselves are finally understanding. And the people on the right are like, yeah, we've been paranoid for generations. I'm glad you're finally starting to understand why we want our guns, you know, because we're looking at you guys like you are coming after us and the way we live our lifestyles. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. If I was living in a small rural town, and I went to church every Sunday, and the entire community had that feel to it, I would honestly believe if the pastor is saying that, you know, the world is turning to homosexuality and drugs are becoming rampant, and if you look at this liberal government, look at what they're allowing gay marriages, they want to allow drugs into the street, and you want these drug addicts, and then, you know, that panic and that fear sets in, and you start thinking, they're not going to come to my house. I'm going to be ready because I don't want that. That's evil.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you something personal about myself. Like, I'm all for people owning guns. You know, I've shot guns, whatever. You know, the only thing that I've always been hesitant about owning a gun is just the laws, right? Because I know the laws are on the book, but I just seen too many situations where like somebody defended themselves in their home and still go to jail. You know what I'm saying? Like, did they fall in your house? Did they fall out your house? You know, if they turned around and ran and you shot them, you know, you can go to jail. It's just,
you're in California, so that people actually go to jail for shooting someone in their house in California.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I can defend myself and feel like I'm really doing the right thing and still go to jail. He turns around and he runs from me in my house, and I shoot him. Now I just shot him in the back. I should have gave him time to run out after you just stole my stuff. You know, so it's just, those are the things that scare me more than actually owning the gun.
And that's one of those things where you know, a lot of people are like, you know, they'll go out and get their concealed carry permit, right? The CCW. And a lot of people are like, oh, why, you know, there's no training, you know, they're just going to give anyone one of those. Well, I mean, I had one for a while, and it's not like there's training, but if you are, because you stand like what, 10, 15 feet away from the target, if you're doing the thing where you aim at the black part and all you hit is dirt off to the side, you don't get your permit, man. they're not signing off, because that goes on that teacher. If you're, you know, they gave you a permit and you're like, well, I never actually shot the target, but you spend like 8 hours sitting in a classroom and they're explaining the gun laws to you. They tell you, this is when you can shoot someone. This is when you can't shoot someone. Here's why you should never shoot someone. You know, it's the bare minimum, I think, right? It's not a course. It's not full training. It's not anything else. But it's a good start to get someone to understand the reality of what they're about to do, right?
You know, I gotta say, man, just even talking about all this and us, like, you know, realizing the impact the impact of all of this. I'm just wondering if we should maybe, you know, put our heads together and put out the effort to really start to bring in some guests that can talk about community organizing. I don't want to see this kind of conversation becoming the norm, because I definitely feel like, I'm glad that we touched on this, because it's important. We have to recognize that there are certain limitations, but I don't want this to happen. I don't want to see society collapse to the point that people cannot communicate to the level where, yeah, we basically have a civil war, when at the end of the day, and Laquan, you were talking about this earlier, when you have somebody like Bernie Sanders that goes out there and intentionally pulls together a meeting of Trump supporters to say, let's talk. And what he basically shows them is, okay, so you're saying you want to protect your Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Well, that's what I'm doing. But this guy that you just elected just blatantly admitted that he lied about it. And now they're currently working on gutting those things out. And then you see his supporters having this awakening. And it's like, we need more of that. We just need to get that truth out there and get the communication going. But I feel like if we lock down, that's where this reality of, well, maybe I should consider getting a gun, maybe I should consider protecting myself, becomes more real, because there's no progress in the discussion. It's just people are clamping down more and more on their sides, and then it's just a matter of a spark lighting that gasoline.
It's almost like purge talk, you know, from the movie. You know, we're talking about, I want to get guns because, you know, if they come to my door, you know, I'm not going out there like that. So if you really frame the conversation, it's almost like we're in the next movie of The Purge right now. We're talking about, okay, well, when this happens, what kind of gun do I want? You know, like, what do I need? How am I going to do this? Eric, are you on my side? Kevin, are you on my side? Do I need, you know, who's who? You know, right. So it's just, and it is sad that we are having this conversation, you know, because it really is kind of like factions. You know, it's like it's starting to become factions within this country. You know, it's like, hey, we got to take care of ourselves. Like, hey, we got to band together, you know, and I think that's the most decisive, you know, divisive thing, you know, about Trump. And to your Bernie point, you know, when I watched the video, oh God, you know, I posted it. I was like, you know, Bernie dropping common sense, because everything that he asked those Trump supporters what they wanted is everything he ran on. Everything. But because everybody labeled him as a socialist, again, you know, the media was like, oh, he's a socialist, or, you know, everybody would say socialist. That's the phrase they hung to, right? They was like, well, let me grab onto the socialist thing. I don't want no socialist. And, you know, I don't even know what a socialist is. They just know that somebody says he's a socialist, and I don't want that.
You know, they think socialist, they think communist, and then they think bad.
Exactly. So everything he asked them, what did they want? He's like, well, you know, I did run on that. I did say this the whole campaign. You know, he said, it sucks now, huh? Yeah, well, I just want you to know that I did run on that. So I don't know. We missed it. We missed it big time, man, with Bernie. And to me, I know there's the reservations and stuff like that, but for me personally, I do think we dropped the ball big time on Bernie. I really think that the country would have went in a whole different direction. I'm not saying it'd been perfect, but what I'm trying to say is I really think, though, that we will look back a decade or two from now and be like, you know what? I wonder what would have happened if Bernie would have went in there. Because he's old as hell now, so I don't know if he'll be around in another decade or two. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, it's similar to when, you know, Al Gore lost to Bush, and you're like, oh, yeah, the guy's not perfect, not by a long shot, but you take a guy that, you know, was the vice president, overqualified, you know, has done all the, especially for those that were interested in, you know, climate, not going underwater, not having CO2 spike and all that good stuff. And then you get the guys like, I just want to drill for oil, make some more money for me and my Bush family, you know. And there was that loss. It wasn't as bad. It didn't hurt as bad as this one hurts, but it hurt. It was a very similar situation. Won the popular vote, lost the Electoral College, but you know, Hillary won by 5 times more than Al Gore beat Bush by.
Well, here's my question for you and Eric. What is society scared of? You know, think about Al Gore, him not winning, and then take Electoral College out. It's the fact that they won, right? And Bernie not, you know, winning. What is society scared of to the point where, you know, you see a candidate there that he says, you know what, I want to help you. You know, he's like, look, I know you're not living well. You know, I know things are not going well. Let me help you fix this. We can do this together. Al Gore's like, you know what, I understand climate change. Let's see if we can reverse this bad boy. Let's see if we can stop it, slow it down, something. Let's prolong our lives so your children's children can have a world they can live in. We don't have to wear oxygen masks, you know, to go to the store. What is society scared of? Because it's always reservation, but it's the villain. Oh, it's like, let's go. You know,
what is it?
I don't
5
get it.
degrees of separation. Like we're separated by so many people, and within that space, if I can manipulate and take your fears, which is exactly what Karl Rove did with W, exact same thing that got Trump elected. If I know how to tap into your fear, and before And that's the thing that I think, again, the Democrats like jacked up on because they got so much media coverage with Hillary early on. Before Bernie's real message could get out, they slapped those fear labels all over him. And before he had a chance to be heard, people thought they knew who he was because that label was slapped. The second people see that on TV where it looks official or any kind of headline, I mean, that's why the whole fake news thing I think is really interesting, because a lot of us are waking up to just because it's a headline doesn't mean a damn thing. You got to look beyond the headline.
Here's the thing. I don't know anyone from the Democratic side. Prefix it with, I live in a bubble. We all live in bubbles. So when I'm talking about I don't know, I'm talking about people I literally, like, in my life, I do not know anyone that was like, oh, Bernie's too far left. Their concern was that he wouldn't be able to win, that he couldn't bring enough of the middle ground, right? That was the concern. It wasn't ever like, oh, he's too much of a socialist or anything. The other side is, why can't someone who comes in saying, hey, let's bring this together, let's make this work? The Republicans would waterboard Jesus Christ into oblivion. They'd be like, that damn Arab socialist communist, we need to teach him a lesson. Gitmo for his punk ass without hesitation. All the self-imposed Christians in this country would line up and tar and feather his ass as they dragged him off to Gitmo. Because hell no.
Okay, well, here's another question then. All right, so I think the last consensus, the last data I've seen was 25% of the American population has a bachelor's degree, right? Something like that, out of over 300 million. Do you think that plays into effect? The fact that, I'm not saying just because you have a degree that makes you super smart, but do you think that plays into effect? Because I know they play on the fears and stuff like that, but anybody with common sense can see through the BS most times. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
more times than not.
Look what a college degree gets you. Look at what is the thing. Common sense is the word common. The thing about a college degree that is common is that you take classes in different classrooms. You're constantly meeting new people. You're constantly hearing new ideas. So there's at least a little bit more of a rounding out of, okay, I may think I know it all, but at least on some level I recognize there's always going to be new stimulus. I mean, when you go through 4 years of a college degree, and all the work that comes from that, all the networking that takes place, it naturally opens you up as a human being. I think that's why so many times we want to push for a college education, because just the experience alone, just the environment alone will open you up to that, as opposed to if you graduate from high school and then you go work in the same job where you're surrounded by the same people and you don't really get outside of your own bubble too much, where college kind of forces that.
Yeah, and so I'm not degrading anybody or saying not having a degree is not good. I'm just saying, I just think the most important thing about the college degree is the critical thinking aspect.
Right.
Just taking the information and not just accepting it for what it is. Trump saying they're sending over the rapists, stuff like that. For you to be like, you know what? That doesn't sound right. Let me go research that. It's a bunch of BS. That's the critical thinking part, not just taking it, as it comes, being like, you know what? Let me dissect this and let me form an opinion after that. And that's why I say, like, do you think that has anything to do, with a lot of the BS that happens, especially him being elected and stuff like that?
The more educated you are, the more liberal you are, the less religious you are. That's the trend line.
That's been proven.
Yeah.
I think the millennials is like the first generation that has had the least amount of religious affiliation of ever.
Yeah. So I had this conversation with my daughter, who is 13, where she was like, I don't want to go to college. And I said, well, you're going to college. And she was like, but I was like, I didn't say you had to graduate, but you do got to go and take a few classes and start to understand the world a little differently. I don't care if you go for 4 years, 1 year, 2 years, but I want you to get in that mindset of thinking about things that are different than you already know and bigger than yourself. So it's not a matter of, is a college degree, does that make you a better person? Not necessarily. It's that exposure to more than just your own little world. So people can get that just by reading books or watching a whole lot of Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like, I don't know, if you're interested in opening yourself up and learning more and trying, there's a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon that I like, where they're laying out under the stars and Calvin looks over and he says, I bet if people stared at the stars more, they'd act a lot differently, or something like, paraphrasing, which, you think about it, like just that laying there thinking, wondering, the imagination that goes into it, that alone, you don't have to go pay anyone for that. just go lay your ass on some grass and watch, just think, go on the journey. And what you're going to see is you open yourself up a bit. And that's all that you go to college to get a job, right? They sneak in all this other stuff, which helps you understand the world a little bit more. Like anthropology, I don't want to learn about that. Well, guess what? You get too stupid. And you get there and you're like, whoa, there's still like tribes? What? There's, the Aborigines in Australia, they still live there? They still don't drive cars? Whoa, that's crazy. It opens you up a little bit.
And I think that was the premise of my question, is the fact that I feel like there's a huge segment of America that's just not open. Again, it's that traditional mindset. It's a very structured, closed-minded mindset. Like, that's why I think the Make America Great thing, again, resonated so well with them, because they're like, yeah, because they feel like the times are passing them by and they're going to get left behind. But if you make America great again and everything behind that, everything gets to stay where it's at. The status quo remains. You put Hillary, you put Bernie in there, they're going to feel. That's why a lot of people say, like, we felt like there's a segment of the population that's going to get left behind. Again, that's a tradition. That's, to me, in my opinion, that's a traditionalist. They're afraid they're going to get left behind because they don't know how to keep up. Because like a lot of them are, factory workers, coal miners. I don't want to just generalize all of them, but most of them are. I'm saying, up and down the Rust Belt, the Bible Belt. A lot of them are Bible thumpers, stuff like that. So they don't, again, to your point, they don't know outside of their bubble. They don't really understand outside of their local town what's going on. So when you have somebody like Trump coming in, he speaks to what the lifestyle they're already living, and they don't want to change, because what change they might. So to Eric's picture, look at that, And again, vote for who you want to vote for, because obviously you did it already. But what I'm just trying to say is that if you look at those blue areas, those are very progressive areas, very metropolitan-esque areas.
If you listen to the commentary on CNN or whatever else you're watching, this is what you always hear, right? They get into the, West Virginia or, New Hampshire or something, and you start to see a bunch of red popping off, and they're like, okay, see that's the rural areas over there. There's not a whole lot of people, but they break way, way to the right. Now you see that little blue dot, that's the college area. Those are all the college educated people. And they rinse and repeat that for every state as they go through it. Oh, you see this area? That's where all those with college education live. That's where, you see this is your blue collar rural areas. And, it's not that having the degree and that, I know some people that don't have college degrees that are, they're way more progressive or liberal than I am. But it's that openness to thinking beyond yourself.
There's definitely, I think, a trend because the reason why I keep coming to this map, and for those of you that aren't familiar with this, these are the 2016 presidential election results by county, blue being for Democrat, red being for Republican. And every time I look at that, it's just very, very telling of how our country is. And I hate saying the word divided, but there's definitely, I think, a distinction between two very different ideologies. And when I look at this, yeah, the progressive mindset, I think it threatens that traditional outlook on things, because a lot of folks in those areas, they, like you said, the whole thing about even the word progressive indicates that something is in motion. And if they feel like they're not a part of what's in motion, then it could concern them, especially if they feel that it violates some of their beliefs. I mean, to this day, and I think Obama has really shut down the people who make this claim, Obama has never said he's coming for anybody's guns. He's never said that. He's come out on record saying, all we're saying is we want to prevent mass shootings, so we want to have strict background checks. We want to make sure that we're not having guns fall into the wrong hands. So, Kevin, to your point earlier, you're not going to get a permit if you're out there recklessly shooting. People want to make sure you know what you're doing. It's a lethal weapon. So I feel like that fear in a lot of those red areas is what it perpetuates what is going on in society, and it's something that Trump tapped into. And now we have a lot of these red areas that are having somebody in place that's going to basically, I think, wreck what they're going for, because he's not in it for anybody else. He's in it for him.
Looking at that map, I mean, granted, with no state lines on there is kind of hard, but it looks like Oklahoma doesn't have one damn blue spot in it. but pert near everything else does. But Oklahoma, right there north of Tejas, it looked like they're red as red can be.
You know what's funny about this map, though? You know when you go to an art gallery and you just kind of look at a painting, you're trying to like just draw, you know, you're trying to figure out what it is, what the meaning of it is to you. You know, the artist has its meaning, you know, has the meaning you try to convey through the art, you know. But when you look at it on the, you know, on the wall, you're kind of sitting there, you're just like, you know, like I could see this and I can feel like this. When I look at this map, I feel like you can stare at it for like hours and just try to draw different conclusions of why it's overwhelmingly red. Like it's almost like somebody accidentally spilled blue on it. You know, I don't feel like there was supposed to be any blue.
That's why I find this so fascinating, because it's the same thing.
Well, so here's the thing, though. If you were to look at that map and if you were to superimpose the major American cities on there, that's the blue parts.
Yep, exactly.
Where there's people, it tends to be blue. So when you look at it, what you know, the takeaway isn't that, oh, you know, Coconino County or you know, went blue or whatever. It's damn, most of the country is some rural ass places. There's not a whole lot of people out in the middle. There's not a whole lot of people. Like, look, so okay, if you know where Nevada is, off to the left there, you see kind of a steep angle.
That's it right here.
Yeah, up to your left there.
Well, this is Vegas right here.
Yeah.
And then Nevada comes out. Here's that slant part of California, and then it comes up.
The only people in Nevada are in the Vegas, Clark County area. Right. There's like 7 people and a donkey in the rest of that damn state. It's, you know, when you're looking at this map, what you're seeing is a lot of populated areas popping up blue. There's some that pop up red. You know, I'm sure there's spots in Tennessee where they hate everything, but most of it is empty country. We have a really big piece of land that this country is, you know, put on.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, yeah, like you're saying it, like, well, so the thing about a lot of these areas and a lot of this is that I think that's what we're trying to ultimately resolve here, is that when you have these kind of different ideologies, and that's the thing, neither side is going to budge because their needs are distinctly different. We've talked about this on previous podcasts. So I feel like, and coming back to Bernie Sanders, he's the one person out of all of them that I think really would have sat down with both of those camps and said, okay, look, obviously we can't go one way or the other because it's too much of a structure. And I think that's why it's interesting that so many people wanted to say that he was far left and socialist, because I think where he really stood was that he's not really on that line. I think he will work with Congress to reach out to what the people's needs are, and those people's are whether you're liberal or conservative or whether in an urban environment or rural, that he would have done what he could do to help those people. So I agree with you on that. But let's go ahead and maybe wrap this up because we are at about an hour and a half. So do you guys have any last comments or anything you want to bring up for a future podcast?
Just to me, we were all going to go to Dakota to go support, but they stopped the pipeline, which I think is only temporary. I'm pretty sure it's over 80% done, so I'm pretty sure it's going to start back up at some point. I just don't know
what happened with that. So there were protests at Standing Rock to shut down a pipeline that was coming through Native American land, and
correct. They're looking to divert it now. So from what I've read, they're looking at a different way to divert it. Maybe you might know a little bit more, Kevin, than that. But
yeah, the CEO basically said we're not diverting anything. First week of January or first week of Trump's presidency, we expect to be back to work. So it's not done. What's done is them playing nice. So January 21st, expect the bulldozers to head back in. They're not going anywhere. They're putting it right where they said they were going to.
Do you think it's gonna be bloodshed?
I absolutely think so.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's about to get real.
What if veterans go and they stand in line like they were?
I don't think they'll be there in time.
No,
this will be one of those things that slips through. And even if they do, Trump will send in the police. They're gonna whoop their ass, drag them off in cages, and put up some fences, put up more security, and they'll just wall them out.
So if the veterans are there, this is the only reason why I don't think it'll happen. only because how everybody remember the whole Colin Kaepernick thing and what he stands for. You know how everybody's like rallying around veterans now and everything. You know, and there's still overwhelming, love for veterans. But I think like if you start, not abusing, but if you harm veterans are out there trying to stand for something, I think all chaos will break out at that point if they're out there. I don't think that sending in police and if they beat them and drag them off, I don't think that would just fly. I think at that point there will be mass unrest if that happens.
What I think is going to happen is, it's not going to be overt and blatant as much as I might have let off. I think what they're going to do is if the veterans start showing up, they're going to start to slander them and say, oh, this guy had a dishonorable discharge. This guy's company commander thought, blah, blah. They're going to bring them down to, to protester level, Ferguson kind of thing. And they're going to do what they're going to do. It's, you get a Purple Heart guy up there. They're going to call him a deserter because it's going to help their narrative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I absolutely think things are going to get real quick. And I think they're going to show up with some private security. I mean, what was it? It was like 19 or 20 police agencies from around the country that showed up to beat up on Native Americans. They're like, oh, I want peace.
I will say there were a lot of agencies too that pulled out as well, said they didn't want no part of that. And it's I don't know, just in the fairness, because we're about to get ready to close this up and interrupt the point. It just always baffles me too that, how robotic the mindset is of a lot of these, agencies out there. Like, how can you literally stand there and look at another human being, and harm him the way you're harming him? Now, I can understand if you're doing your job and you have to put him down, but it's below freezing degree weather and you're spraying water on these people. You're shooting you're shooting with rubber bullets. You're doing all type of stuff. A woman had her arm, like, I don't know, almost blown off. There's like little kids, getting hit. Women who were pregnant got shot. Like, I just, where is your morality? I mean, is it gone? Was it trained out of you? Like,
we don't educate for that. Don't even, dude, I will dedicate an entire podcast to that. We do not educate for that. It's not in our K through 12 and it's not in our higher education. It's not to say that it's totally absent, but the proportionately how much we talk about right and wrong to the vastness of, I don't want to say useless information, but a lot of it really doesn't get applied. So it makes you wonder, should we be spending our time 90% talking about things the students may or may not even remember by the time they graduate? Or do you think it might be wiser that we focus on that 10% and extend that? So that way, by the time people graduate, pardon my French, but they're not, or Kevin, I know you get on that, pardon my French.
Dude, what the hell's wrong with French people, you racist?
Sorry, it's a figure of speech. I'm just used to it.
I think it's of them. Oh, good.
Yeah, but like, do we want them graduating, not having a clear sense of right and wrong, not having a clear sense of compassion, not having a clear sense of listening and formulating an argument? That's what upsets me about the education system, is that we're not focusing on morals. And because of that, that's why things are degrading. That's why we're talking about guns. That's why we're talking about, all this social unrest. It's because we have not been doing a good job when they're young to educate them on how to communicate properly. So anyways, rant's over.
One, you don't want people who can think for themselves. So you stop it with all this common sense. That's not the purpose of education. They kick you out so you'll be a productive, structured citizen, and a happy employee. They don't want you out there thinking for yourself, changing things. The more people start thinking for themselves, the more you won't start changing things. You'll start seeing things for the way they are. You'll start questioning things. You can't have that.
Well, on that note, I think we got plenty to move forward with on some future podcasts. So, Laquan, Kevin, nice seeing you guys again. It's been a couple weeks, and we'll be back next week. For those of you that have been watching, thank you.
Next week's Christmas Eve, so unless we're beating up on Jesus, I don't know that we're going to do that one.
Ooh, that's a good point, because we were talking about looking at religion, and I think Christmas would be a good one to look at, because if I'm not mistaken, that's not actually Jesus's birthday.
He was born in April, if he was born at all.
Yeah, that actually Christmas, as we know it, is actually a pagan holiday. So there's just kind of a whole mound of stuff when it comes to religion. So we definitely do want to talk about that on a future podcast. And I actually have some folks in mind, good Christians. I think people that would be interested to have this conversation, because I do think that it would be an interesting thing to look at. This is where, though, I got to say, I know you guys well enough, but we got to keep it civil, because if people come into this is their belief. And while it should be able to stand up to criticism, I do want to be mindful that, wherever people are coming from, this is their faith and this is what they really believe. And there's only so much that they're going to be willing to.
I am nice to wrong people all the time.
Look, there was times where Jesus was uncivil too. So, hey.
That's why the waterboarding comes in.
Oh, Lord. Well, anyways, yeah, we'll definitely cover that one. And whether we're back next week or not, we'll definitely be back for another podcast sometime soon. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you guys later.